When someone cuts you off in traffic or you get bad news at work, it's almost impossible to hide your emotions. But billionaires? They face problems 1,000 times bigger, and yet their faces stay calm, their voices steady. How do they pull this off? The answer is a psychological trick they've trained for years, and it's something you can use too. Imagine losing $10 billion in a single day. Would you panic? Would you scream? Most people would collapse under the pressure. Their minds would race, their hearts would take over. It's not luck, it's not arrogance, it's a specific mental habit. And once you understand it, you'll start reacting like the top 1%. Picture this. Stock markets are plunging, news headlines scream crisis, and investors around the globe are panicking. Phones are buzzing, deals are collapsing, and for most people, this kind of chaos would trigger sheer panic. But in the middle of it all, a billionaire CEO walks into the boardroom, sits down, and speaks with a tone so steady it feels almost unnatural. No fear in the eyes, no shaky voice, no impulsive reaction. Just calm. This isn't luck. It's not even arrogance, it's psychology. Billionaires know something the rest of us often forget. Emotions, while human, can be dangerous in high-stakes decision-making. A single moment of panic can cost billions. A burst of anger can ruin negotiations. Even too much excitement can blind you to risk. That's why mastering emotions isn't just a skill for them, it's survival. Think about it. When you're under pressure, your brain's fight or flight response kicks in. Heart rate rises, palms sweat, focus narrows. For ordinary people, that reaction is hardwired, but billionaires, they've learned to override it. They understand that in moments when everyone else is emotional, the calmest person in the room automatically has the advantage. This calmness doesn't mean they don't feel emotions. They absolutely do. But instead of letting emotions dictate their decisions, they use them as signals. Stress tells them something needs attention. Fear highlights potential risk. Excitement signals opportunity. But the final decision, that comes from a neutral, rational place. So why do they appear almost emotionless? Because they've built a mental shield. They've trained themselves to see emotions not as commands, but as data. They can acknowledge what they feel without being controlled by it. And that shift alone is what separates a billionaire calmly steering through chaos from an average person, crumbling under pressure. And here's the thing, this calm isn't accidental. It's deliberately built, conditioned over years of practice and experience. In the next section, we'll dive into how billionaires reframe fear, stress, and failure, not as enemies, but as powerful allies. Fear, stress, failure. For most people, these words feel heavy, almost paralyzing, but for billionaires, they mean something entirely different. Instead of fighting these emotions, they reframe them into useful tools. Take fear, for example. To an average person, fear signals danger and often leads to hesitation or avoidance. But a billionaire looks at fear differently. Fear is information. It highlights what's at stake, where the risks are, and where deeper focus is required. Instead of running from it, they lean into it. They ask, what is this fear teaching me? That simple mental flip turns fear from a barrier into a guide. Stress works the same way. Most of us view stress as destructive, something to escape. But high performers know stress is energy. It means the situation matters. Instead of letting it spiral into anxiety, they channel stress into preparation, sharper focus, and quicker action. Where one person breaks down under stress, another uses that same pressure to rise above. And then there's failure, the word that terrifies most people. Billionaires don't see failure as an ending, they see it as feedback. Every failure is a data point, a lesson that gets them closer to success. That's why so many billionaires actually take more risks than the average person. To them, failure is temporary, but the insights it brings are permanent. Here's the key. Billionaires don't deny their emotions. They experience them fully, but they immediately reframe them. Fear becomes focus. Stress becomes fuel, Failure becomes feedback. This mental shift allows them to act with clarity, while everyone else is drowning in self-doubt or panic. Think of it like emotional judo. They don't resist the force, they redirect it, and that's what makes them appear so unshakable when life throws curveballs. In the next section, we'll go deeper into the actual conditioning that builds this resilience, how billionaires practice emotional control until it becomes second nature. If reframing emotions is the mindset, then conditioning is the practice. Billionaires don't wake up magically emotionless. They train themselves into calmness the same way an athlete trains their body. And this conditioning often starts long before they ever make their first million. One method is exposure. By constantly placing themselves in high-pressure situations, deals that could collapse, projects that could fail, investments that could sink, they desensitize themselves to stress. What once would have felt overwhelming now feels normal. Just like lifting heavier weights builds muscle, handling heavier risks builds emotional endurance. Another tool is ritual. Many billionaires have strict routines that ground them, whether it's meditation, journaling, early morning workouts, or even deliberate silence before a big decision. These rituals act as reset buttons. They create a calm baseline, so when chaos strikes, they're starting from stability instead of anxiety. Then comes perspective. Billionaires train their minds to zoom out. A loss of a few $1 million? Painful, yes, but in the grand scheme of their empire, it's a blip. By keeping a wide-angle lens, they prevent themselves from being swallowed by short-term emotions. This perspective gives them the patience to think long-term, while everyone else is reacting in the moment. And perhaps the most powerful conditioning tool of all is detachment. They learn to separate their identity from outcomes. Success doesn't inflate their ego, and failure doesn't destroy their self-worth. By detaching who they are from what happens, they create a shield against emotional swings. Put all of this together, exposure, rituals, perspective, detachment, and you begin to see why billionaires seem almost superhuman in their calmness. But in reality, it's a skill set, a learned behavior, something built day after day until calmness becomes automatic. Now that we understand the psychology and conditioning behind billionaire calm, the real question is, what is the actual trick they use to appear so emotionless in any situation? In the next chapter, we'll uncover the secret of emotional neutrality and how you can use the very same trick in your own life. So what's the actual trick billionaires use to appear emotionless, even in the most extreme circumstances? It all comes down to one principle: emotional neutrality. Emotional neutrality doesn't mean being cold or robotic. It doesn't mean you don't feel. Instead, it's the ability to create a mental space between what happens around you and how you respond to it. In simple terms, events don't control billionaires. Their interpretation of those events does. When a deal falls apart, most people react instantly: anger, disappointment, even panic. But someone practicing emotional neutrality pauses. They acknowledge the emotion, but don't let it drive their decision. They ask, what's the reality here? What's the next best move? That pause, that microsecond of detachment, is where their power lies. Think of emotional neutrality like being the referee in your own mind. The emotions show up: fear, excitement, frustration. But instead of letting one team dominate, you stay in the middle, observing. By not attaching too strongly to either extreme, you make clearer, sharper, more rational decisions. Why is this so critical for billionaires? Because they live in a world where stakes are magnified. A rash reaction could cost not hundreds, but billions. If they let emotions run wild, it's not just their money at risk, it's thousands of jobs, entire companies, even industries. Neutrality protects them from the roller coaster that destroys so many leaders under pressure. Here's the twist: emotional neutrality isn't suppression. Suppressing emotions is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It always bursts back up, harder than before. Neutrality, instead, is recognition without attachment. You feel the fear, You notice the anger, you acknowledge the excitement, but you don't become them. It's this separation that makes billionaires look almost untouchable. And in the next section, we'll see how some of the world's wealthiest have used emotional neutrality to steer through crises that would have broken anyone else. To really understand emotional neutrality, let's look at billionaires in action. Because theory is one thing, but seeing it play out under pressure is another. Take Warren Buffett, for example. During the 2008 financial crisis, when banks were collapsing and the world was gripped with fear, Buffett didn't panic sell or retreat. While investors were in a frenzy, he calmly invested billions into companies like Goldman Sachs and General Electric, moves that later brought him enormous returns. His calm wasn't about ignoring fear. It was about observing it, recognizing the opportunity hidden beneath the panic, and acting with neutrality instead of emotion. Or consider Jeff Bezos. In Amazon's early days, the company faced brutal criticism. Analysts predicted failure, competitors laughed, and stock prices plummeted. A typical founder might have been consumed by frustration or desperation, but Bezos stayed neutral. He focused on long-term vision rather than short-term noise. That neutrality allowed him to keep building quietly, while emotions destroyed his competitors. Then there's Elon Musk. Whether you admire him or not, his handling of pressure is extraordinary. Think about the countless failed SpaceX rocket launches. Millions of dollars exploded in seconds, live on global television. Most leaders would have cracked under that humiliation. Musk? He acknowledged the setbacks, stayed calm, and pressed forward until SpaceX made history. Neutrality didn't erase disappointment, but it stopped emotions from derailing progress. These examples prove one thing. Neutrality isn't about being detached from reality. It's about not letting temporary emotions dictate permanent decisions. Buffett saw opportunity where others saw doom. Bezos saw focus where others saw failure. Musk saw lessons where others saw embarrassment. When you zoom out, the pattern becomes clear. Billionaires don't avoid emotional storms, they step into them with a shield of neutrality. That shield doesn't just protect their decisions, it multiplies their advantage when everyone else is drowning in reaction. In the next section, we'll break down how you can start training emotional neutrality in your own life, even if you're not dealing with billion-dollar stakes. So how can you practice emotional neutrality without billions of dollars on the line? The truth is, this trick isn't reserved for the ultra-wealthy. Anyone can train it, if you're willing to practice. The first step is the pause. When something triggers a strong emotional reaction, anger, fear, or excitement, don't react instantly. Give yourself just a few seconds to breathe. That pause creates the mental space billionaires use to separate feeling from action. Second, label your emotion. Say to yourself, I'm feeling fear or I'm feeling frustration. By naming the emotion, you shift it from an unconscious reaction into a conscious observation. This tiny shift reduces its power over you. Third, zoom out. Ask yourself, will this matter in a week, a month, a year? This perspective keeps you from being trapped in short-term emotions. Billionaires think in decades, not days. That's why neutrality comes more naturally to them. Fourth, rituals matter. Meditation, journaling, or even a daily walk can reset your emotional baseline. Think of it as mental hygiene. Just like brushing your teeth keeps your mouth clean, rituals keep your emotions balanced. So neutrality becomes easier when pressure hits. Success doesn't define who you are, and failure doesn't erase your value. This detachment builds resilience. When your self-worth isn't tied to every result, emotions lose their grip. Try applying this tomorrow in a small situation. Maybe someone cuts you off in traffic, or a coworker snaps at you. Instead of reacting instantly, pause. Label the emotion, zoom out. Decide from neutrality. That tiny practice, repeated often, builds the same mental strength billionaires rely on daily. Because at the end of the day, emotional neutrality isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming unshakable. And in a chaotic world, that calmness is the most valuable currency you can ever own. So what have we really uncovered today? Beneath the glamour of billionaire lifestyles, the private jets, the empires, the headlines, lies something far more powerful: the ability to stay calm when the world isn't. We started by exploring the psychology of billionaire calm. We saw how emotions, if left unchecked, can wreck billion-dollar deals in seconds. Yet for billionaires, emotions aren't enemies, they're signals. Fear points to risk, stress sharpens focus, failure becomes feedback. Instead of fighting emotions, they reframe them into tools. Then we uncovered their conditioning, the years of exposure, routines, perspective, and detachment that make calmness second nature. They don't avoid storms, they build themselves to withstand them. And finally, we revealed the secret trick: emotional neutrality. The pause before reaction. The ability to acknowledge emotions without being ruled by them. The practice of zooming out, detaching from outcomes, and acting from clarity instead of chaos. We saw it in Warren Buffett's patience, Jeff Bezos's long-term focus, Elon Musk's resilience under failure. And we discovered how you too can practice it by pausing, labeling, zooming out, building rituals, and detaching self-worth from outcomes. At the core, billionaires aren't emotionless robots. They're humans who've mastered the art of neutrality. And that's why when markets collapse, when rockets explode, when critics shout, they stand steady while everyone else shakes. Now here's the real question. What would change in your life if you practiced emotional neutrality? Imagine arguments where you no longer lose your cool, business or career decisions made with clarity instead of panic, personal setbacks that feel like stepping stones instead of walls. This isn't just billionaire psychology, it's human psychology at its highest level. And if billionaires can train it, so can you. If this resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to Zinra for more deep dives into billionaire psychology, mindset, and strategies for life. And before you go, drop a comment. What topic do you want us to explore next? Your idea might just be our next big episode. Because the trick billionaires use to stay emotionless isn't just for them. It's for anyone ready to rise above emotions and lead with clarity.